Does it add anything new?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Lead to positive child outcomes, such as high self-esteem, high self-adequacy. They found that indeed helicopter parenting is significantly correlated with. In this article, we want to focus on the definition of the six dimensions of parenting.
By saying like what is actually helicopter parenting? Because I feel like this term has been like thrown around like
I would like to review the three articles of what is a Good Mother Project Channel Season 1's reading list. Season 1, Article 1, Darling Steinberg, 1993. There were basically three models that the paper presented. So first of all, parental goals and values is the antecedent of parenting style. And then the kind of parenting style is leading toward the child's openness to socialization by the parents as a personality. Model 2 postulates that parental goals and values determines parenting practices. And then parenting practices directly affect the child's developmental instrumental competences. Their paper's integrated model, it's on how Model 1 and Model 2 are combined in explaining parenting style effects. They postulated that parental goals and values as the antecedent variable or factor leading to the kind of parenting style that a parent adopts and the kinds of parenting practices that a parent uses. These two factors are affecting the child's behavior and personality. Particularly, parenting style moderates the effectiveness of parenting practices towards leading to the child's developmental instrumental competences. So later on, because of this conceptual model, parenting style is being investigated by its direct effect on the child's developmental instrumental competences. One of the questions I wanted us to discuss on is parenting style is what matters in shaping the child's personality and the child's developmental instrumental competencies, things like that. So is this conceptual model, Darling and Steinberg, 1993, adding anything new to our understanding of the effect of parenting on child outcomes? Does it add anything new?
ooh, that is a good question. I think maybe this is just me, but I think like in our general like zeitgeist or like the common sense of our societies, like obviously like parental goals and values will shape parenting styles and practices, which then obviously shape the child. Like I feel like we all at least like have a little bit of understanding of like obviously like what the parents does or like what the goals of the parents are through their practices like shape who the child becomes or like who the child is. But maybe I think the insightful thing here is that it kind of directly shows that, or like it shows like the specific chain that it's like, it's not just parents' goals affect the child, it's like how they do it affects the child. So I think it just makes that connection more clear and it's like more explicit in like how exactly the parent through their parenting style and practices affects the child. What do you think?
No, I just think that, like, if I just asked a parent this question about how you think you have affected your kid's personality, I think maybe some parents might not recognize how much they have affected the child's personality. And some parents might be aware of that. You know what I mean? Like, some parents might realize that, oh, yeah, hey, actually, I contribute to shaping my child's personality. My child's behavior or these kind of tantrums or emotional outbursts are actually from me, imitating, my kind of style. So I think there are parents who are not aware of that. And there are parents who
Oh.
are more concerned and they're more aware of the fact that their doings or their not doing is affecting their kids' personality and some of the developmental outcomes in the kids.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just assumed that obviously all parents do, but I guess like not everyone is aware of this.
Yeah, my impression, like from like my general observations of people's behavior, they some tend to not be very aware of the positive things that they have affected the child or the negative things they have affected the child. Yeah. So maybe the positive things might be easier to identify. Like a parent probably can identify the good things that they have done for the child's achievement, but in terms of the child's failures, maybe they're less
Mm.
able to associate the more negative outcomes of the kids and their negative doings, that the negative styles that might have led to the negative outcomes in the kid.
I think that's a very interesting point to bring up because I remember we talked about this. I can't remember if this was in a video or like one of our meetings. Parents, or I guess people in general, tend to like take responsibility for something like if it's a good outcome, but then they for if something like turns out to be bad or if it's a bad outcome, like they are more wanting to or like trying to like shift the blame to something else. So like in this example, like if the child is like I don't know, performing well at school, let's say, like the parent is more willing or like there's this kind of like want for them to like take some credit for it because it's like, oh, because of my parenting, like my child is succeeding or like doing well academically versus
Mhm.
like if the child is doing badly, it's like, oh, it's actually not my fault that the child or like that my child is doing badly because like they like didn't study properly and that does like that's not directly because of me.
That's
Does that
right.
make sense?
That's the fundamental attribution error.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
sorry. I like had a momentary black. I was like, what is that called?
Yes, you got it. Yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes. Very nice. That is why we see the kinds of models that Garcia and Serra 2019 were testing. Literally, they tested the effects of parenting style on the outcome variables, which were the self-esteem variables, the psychosocial maturity variables, and the emotional adjustment or maladjustment variables. In model one, we know that warm and kind, that is the indulgent parenting style, leads to higher self-esteem and higher psychosocial maturity and higher emotional regulatory skills. Model two demonstrates that cold and strict, so-called authoritarian parenting style, leads to lower self-esteem, lower psychosocial maturity, and lower emotional regulatory skills. And then Model 3 demonstrates that cold and kind, so-called neglectful parenting style, leads to lower self-esteem, lower psychosocial maturity, and lower emotional regulatory skills. In particular, I want to highlight the differences in effects between the cold and strict parenting style, which is the authoritarian parenting style, and the cold and kind parenting style. For example, a strict and cold authoritarian parent leads the child to have lower emotional regulatory skills, i.e., they have more anger, hostility, and more anxiety. For what reason? For not meeting the standards a parent set, right? Because the parent is cold and strict. So they tend to be angry against the parent, or hostile against the parent's high standard, and also they are anxious that when they cannot meet their parent standards, they're going to be punished by the parent. On the other hand, the cold and kind, neglectful parenting style leads to also lower emotional regulatory skills in the child for different sets of reasons. The child now with the cold and kind parents still can have anger, hostility, and anxiety. For what reason? For the parents not giving him or her guidance, support, and care. So these children also have lower emotional regulatory skills. They have high anger, hostility, and anxiety for not receiving guidance, support, and care, as you can see for different sets of reasons. By the authoritarian parenting style, the kid tends to turn into narcissistic behavior. But on the other hand, the cold and kind parenting style tends to lead to learned helplessness, emotional codependence, and people-pleasing behaviors in the child. Any questions regarding these two same outcomes coming out from like two different parenting styles, although they share one common trait that is the coldness. Yeah, but
Mhm.
one type is strict, one type is kind. The point is that parental coldness is bad enough
Mhm.
to lead to the negative child outcomes.
I think maybe it's just interesting that both authoritarian and neglectful lead to the same outcomes. Because maybe you would think there would be like slight nuances or like slightly different outcomes. I think it's just interesting that yeah, parental coldness is such a big impact in bringing about like low self-esteem and like all the other stuff.
And for different reasons,
Yeah.
I was pointing out, although, as I mentioned, Garcia and Sarah didn't make that interpretation. Oftentimes, you see those people with anger, hostility, and anxiety issues, like a lot of them really show narcissistic traits. Let's recall Rohner's findings. narcissistic individuals are very hypersensitive toward criticism. They distort reality very easily. They see criticism when there's really not criticism, right? So that's why they get angry easily. They're very prone to having anger outbursts and being hostile, and
Hmm.
also have anxiety for not meeting the standards. These individuals, they were raised by cold and strict parents. When they become an adult, they develop these narcissistic traits, very self-centered. At the core, they have very low self-esteem. That's why they couldn't take criticism. They will take slight as criticism. I'm observing also these same individuals actually demonstrate learned helplessness in certain situations.
Oh.
They also demonstrate people-pleasing behavior. People with really diagnosed NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, they would use love bombing to please people. They're capable of showing cognitive empathy,
Hmm.
and yet they can turn very hostile and devaluating people. Once they see you as a prey, then they will want to get you because they want to get this prey. And then once they got you, they'll turn away from you. They will go against you. Yeah, quite sad, indeed. Obviously, we're developing some empathy toward these people because they are obviously victims of cold and strict or cold and neglectful parenting style. Also, I think there is a possible development between controlling parenting style and the cold and kind, I don't care parenting style. For example, when a parent who tends to use the cold and strict parenting style to a child, but then the child shows a lot of anger, hostility, and anxiety in themselves, then the parents tend to give up on using the authoritarian style, and then they turn to the I don't care parental goals and values, and still is cold, but appearing kind, using the I don't care attitude toward the child. Just based on these like three outcome variables that Garcia and Serra were studying,
Hmm.
um, it's just sometimes it strikes me, how unimportant some parents feel that these things, these outcomes, or these developmental instrumental outcomes, you know, the, maybe let me phrase it again, like how insignificant these things they feel should be seen on the kids.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Yeah. They are not aware of the fact that helping a child develop a higher self-esteem is quite important, for example.
Hmm.
Where they probably are aware of the fact that a child's having higher emotional regulatory skills, it's better, and yet they don't know how to help a child develop that kind of skill.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes sense. Yes. I feel like, again, maybe this is just my assumption, but like, I feel like as a parent, obviously you would want your child to like have like high self-esteem or like be able to cope with things and be an affective coper or like just like have like certain skills.
Hmm.
Like I feel like those goals sound quite obvious to anyone or like specifically any parent, but like I think the problem is like what are the means they use to like teach the child or like to get them to achieve those goals and like the means or like the
Mm.
means being like the parenting practices, the parenting style, like that's not always the most optimal or like maybe they're misinformed
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, I so agree. The means that, a parent, um, like, would they ever like think of how to teach a child emotional regulatory skills? How do
Mhm.
you do it? Is it reading a book together or just teaching, direct teaching, or, using, an incident they watch on TV, right? The means. That is a good question. I was, yeah, the other day I was like tying up the children's book that I have at home. I have a large collection of books that are very much written and centered on relationship between parent and child and between siblings at the
Mhm.
home. Yeah, the Berenstain Bears. Yeah,
Mhm.
those cartoons. The topics that the authors, the Berenstain family. I forgot Stan and Jen Berenstain. Yeah, they were yeah. The stories were very much centered on yeah the communication between parents and the kids at home, and then how they should deal with the different challenges that they face in their short life, like such as like going to kindergarten, riding on a school bus, going to a camp, or how they should behave at a restaurant, all these little challenges. and making these teaching into like a fun story. And
Hmm.
obviously very cute illustration as well, like a cartoon. Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I totally agree that parents like are lacking of these tools in yeah to teach the child these values of like okay we should regulate our own emotions and maybe as an adult they also might not have the skills to regulate their own emotions as an adult.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not something we naturally are good at, particularly when we grew up as a child, right? We also didn't learn these good skills until
Mhm.
later on, yeah, in our lives, right? In article number 3, Rohner 2021, Rohner listed 5 outcomes of parental rejection. The parental rejection styles that Rohner described included parental coldness, parental hostility, and parental neglect. These 5 outcomes were impaired self-esteem, impaired self-adequacy, i.e., the unlovable self, negative self-perceptions, including emotional incapacity, hostility, and anxiety, increase in dependence on significant others, like need for conformity, and hypersensitivity to criticisms and distortion of reality. In Rohner 2021's conceptual paper, he listed findings showed that in the general population, 20 to 40% of rejected individuals are affective copers, who are those with no signs of maladaptive behaviors or symptoms, compared with 60 to 80% of those rejected individuals who were instrumental copers. That means they were showing all signs of maladaptive behaviors or symptoms. Rhonda listed about 6 factors that are conducive to one becoming an affective copers of childhood rejection. The first factor that Rhonda listed, based on the research that he reviewed or he conducted, was having one parent that is warm and kind. And then the 5 other factors included having high levels of inborn and learned social cognitive capabilities. For example, high level of self-differentiation, high level of self-determination, and high level of depersonalization. The second factor is successful psychotherapy or intervention. The third factor is positive work experiences. The fourth factor is satisfying intimate relationship. The fifth factor is emotionally gratifying experiences, including recognitions, achievements, and support. First of all, the warm and kind parenting style is the best parenting style. Why? Because the warm and kind parenting style has been proven to lead to positive child outcomes, such as high self-esteem, high self-adequacy, positive self-perceptions, higher psychosocial maturity, higher emotional regulatory skills, etc. My question is why? There are questions that we can discuss. What are the other features or constructs of parenting in their nuances? What about control? Is parental control good or bad? What about the other important child outcomes, such as academic success, grades? Any reaction on the last slide?
I like that you pose the question like why is this parenting style like the best parenting style? And like because it like brings about the highest like self-esteem or like self-adequacy. Like I think it'd be interesting to pinpoint like what exactly about this parenting style is so good or like what exactly about this parenting style brings about these outcomes and like maybe we can like narrow it down to like specific parenting practices like I don't know, complimenting your child or like being more specific because even like maybe like if parents see this research they're like, "Oh, so I should like be warm and kind." But like how does one be warm and kind to their child? Or like what does that look like?
I so agree. I so agree. Yeah. So the research obviously just show us the relationship, the cause and effects, but it doesn't show the process. So
Yeah.
I so agree that for us to translating the research findings into practical process and suggestions for applications, that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll work on those. Yeah. Now let me introduce what is a Good Mother Project Channel Season 2 reading list. Let's take a look at the summary models of article number 1, Odenweller, Booth, Butterfield, and Weber 2014. Their study can be summarized by 2 models that I put together. So let's take a look at model 1. Odenweller et al. Studied the relationship between helicopter parenting using HPI as the measurement instrument and these 3 outcome variables in the adult child. They used college students as the respondents. The 3 outcome variables they studied was neuroticism, interdependency on significant others, and coping efficacy. Model 1 illustrates that they found a positive relationship between helicopter parenting and higher neuroticism, higher interdependency on significant others, and lower coping efficacy in the college students. Let's take a look at model 2. In their study, they further looked at the relationship between helicopter parenting and other established parenting style, which is the authoritarian, cold and strict parenting style, as well as another variable called conformity family communication pattern. They found that indeed helicopter parenting is significantly correlated with the authoritarian, cold and strict parenting style, and helicopter parenting is also significantly positively correlated with the conformity family communication pattern. I just wonder, do you think our viewers might need some explanation on what correlation means? Do you want to explain it?
Sure. So basically what correlation means, it's like if something is like A is correlated to B, it just means like A is associated with B and also like B is associated with A. It doesn't really specify like a direction. It's not like B causes A or like A causes B. Do you have
Mhm.
anything to add?
Yeah, I think what you're describing, it's quite possible, although we might not know why two things occur at the same time. They tend to occur at the same time. Yeah, so for example, in this case, the measure of helicopter parenting, it's very, in some aspect, quite close to the measures of authoritarian parenting style, as well as the conformity family communication pattern. So that's why they appears correlated. That means they
They like
might have
appear
some
like related.
similarity. Similarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Furthermore, the helicopter parenting is significantly correlated with higher neuroticism, higher independency on significant others, and lower coping efficacy. Now let's move on to article number 2, Howard, Nicholson, and Chestnut, 2019. In this study, they did a structural equation modeling on the pathways from helicopter parenting and another dimension of parenting measure that is parental acceptance slash involvement. It can be referred to as responsiveness of the parent to the child's needs. So these two, helicopter parenting and parental acceptance slash involvement, responsiveness, is used as predictors of academic success. Now, in this study, they don't just use GPA as the measure of academic success. This academic success measures other areas that can contribute to academic success in terms of not just grades, but motivation, socialization, concentration, adjustment, career decidedness, anxiety level, and other general academic skills. Now, another variable that is very interesting to the study is the concept of grit, G-R-I-T, grit. What does grit mean? Grit means a person who's able to endure failures, uncertainties for a long time before they finally get to the level of achievements or the goals that they want to pursue. There's a saying that says failures is the mother of success. Obviously, we will encounter a lot of failures, a lot of hiccups, a lot of turmoils. It takes a lot of belief in oneself. One of the findings that they found that is the correlation between helicopter parenting and lower grit. So helicopter parenting leads to lower grit in the college students. Secondly, in model 2, helicopter parenting is significantly correlated with lower academic success, which means lower internal motivation, confidence, lower socialization, lower concentration, lower personal adjustment, lower career decidedness, higher level of anxiety, which is like a reverse score, and lower general academic skills. Now, model 3 is the most interesting. And what they found in this model, they found positive correlation between parental acceptance, involvement, and grit. Okay, and then a positive relationship between grit and academic success. What is interesting is that once grit is entered into the model as a mediator, the direct pathway from parental acceptance involvement toward academic success is no longer statistically significant. So what does that mean? It means that parental acceptance, involvement, responsiveness does not automatically lead to academic success unless the parental acceptance, involvement is breeding the grit in the child, contributing to higher grit in the child, and then grit is leading the child towards academic success. On the other hand, negative correlation is between helicopter parenting and grit, and helicopter parenting and academic success is shown on this model. Helicopter parenting is leading to lower grit in the college students, and helicopter parenting is also directly leading to lower academic success in the college students. And grit is actually what the parent wants to foster in his or her child. Article number 3 is by Skinner, Johnson, and Snyder, 2005. In this article, we want to focus on the definition of the 6 dimensions of parenting that Skinner et al. Sets out to investigate. They are warmth, rejection, structure, coercion, chaos, and autonomy granting support. I highlighted some important thing that Skinner et al. Pointed out. Okay, first of all, the definition of warmth. Warmth is not equivalent to involvement. What is parental involvement? Parental involvement is the amount of commitment to and engagement in the parenting role as indexed by time spent, knowledge, and participation in parenting activities, maybe including school-based or home-based parenting activities. That's parental involvement. But what is parental warmth? Warmth is the emotional availability, support, and genuine caring. Now let's take a look at rejection. Okay, rejection doesn't mean neglect, because some people might confuse rejection as just neglect. What is neglect? Neglect is diminished, inactive, or indifferent parenting. So rejection is, according to Skinner, hostility, active dislike, which means aversion, overreactivity, irritability, explosiveness, as well as overt communication of negative feelings for the child, such as through criticism, derision, and disapproval. It's more on the emotional level. Okay, now let's move on to structure. What is parental structure? Parental structure is kind of like restrictiveness. What is restrictiveness? Restrictiveness is firm parent demands for maturity and obedience, high standards, strictness, and punitiveness. Behavioral control. So structure is a moderate amount of restrictiveness is optimal, leading to expectations of curvilinear relationships between assessments of restrictiveness and child outcomes, which means little restrictiveness doesn't lead to good outcomes. Very, very strict restrictiveness doesn't lead to good outcomes. But moderate amount, a moderate level of restrictiveness would lead to optimal outcome. A very little of it is bad. A lot of it is bad, but moderate amount is good. Let's take a look at coercion. Coercion is the psychological control of the parents. It's arbitrary, punitive, controlling insistence on strict obedience, lack of autonomy support, or granting for individuality. Chaos is similar to permissiveness. Permissiveness is another parenting style. Chaos means indulgence, lacks discipline, protectiveness, and freedom granting. It's also like inconsistency, unpredictability, lacks discipline. Okay, the last dimension is the autonomy granting or autonomy support. It is the parents communicating genuine respect and defense and encouraging children to actively discover, explore, and articulate their own views, goals, and preferences, as well as the interactions in which children are expected to express their views and opinions, and in which these are given weight in planning and problem solving. Okay, good. So through Skinner, Johnson, and Snyder 2005's research, we're gonna take a really closer look at what parental warmth really is using the measurement items. Yeah, so through those measuring items, we can find evidences of how a parent can convey warmth to a child. Yeah, so stay tuned to our next episodes. Now let's talk about misconceptions of passive parenting and helicopter parenting.
I feel like I want to start this off by saying, like, what is actually helicopter parenting? Because I feel like this term has been like thrown around like just a lot, or like in general conversations with like people in general. Maybe in terms of cold and strict parenting, the term helicopter parenting is like thrown in as like a buzzword, but like, do people actually understand what it means? And like, sometimes it's like seen as like the opposite of positive parenting, but is that actually true?
I think as a college student, they probably would not know that their parents are helicopter parents or just normal parents. So, these researchers on helicopter parenting are looking for definitions, definitely, for the so-called helicopter parenting. But basically, the term appears as a real descriptor of these parents hovering on the college campuses. Yeah, in the US. Yeah. Starting at the beginning of year 2000, like these 21st century, so these college administrators noticed a lot of parents coming, hovering onto the campus, looking for the kids, asking questions on behalf of the college kids, and doing many things with the kids. They didn't see this phenomenon back in the 90s. They probably would see parents only when it's like commencement. But now they're seeing parents coming onto the campus quite often. And so they realize that, these college kids now have various sorts of management problems. Maybe they can't handle certain things on campus. Yeah.
Oh,
So that's why they wanted to study if these helicopter parents are causing these maladaptive behavior that they're seeing in these college kids. Yeah.
hmm,
So, but uh yeah, we will have to ask college students if, how they feel, about that. I mean, do they want the parents to, to do things for them, to still manage things for them while they're in college, or do they want to be independent? Yeah, just like okay, they should be. I mean, yeah, once they're a college student, they are an adult, and they should be managing their own things. Yeah, whether they are thriving in courses, or they're like flunking all the classes, that's their own predicament, right?
mhm,
The parents can't help them, right? Yeah. But I guess like yeah, the ages are different now. Like yeah, parents are like a more hands-on
mhm.
sometimes.
I think so. Maybe this is because like I've only experienced like parenting in the 21st century. Um, but I feel like the old theory or like the predominant theory of parenting is like, oh, you just kind of like let your kids figure out like whatever they want to do or like I feel like kids back in like before the 21st century had a lot of freedom and like opportunity to kind of just do whatever and like their parents not wouldn't care as much, but like they aren't as like restrictive on their kids or like there aren't as many like guidelines or like safety precautions or things the parents are worried about. Um, but I think like with technology, and just like maybe like everything is now kind of demanding like a higher levels of whatever has to be achieved, like higher levels of productivity or like higher education levels and higher whatever. Um, I see this like helicopter parenting as in like the parents want to like oversee whatever their child is doing as more of like a, oh because for my child to succeed in this like 21st century society like they have to have like a certain level of education or like have a certain level of productiveness or like have a certain level of experiences and like skills and so this is like their way of bringing about these goals like is the helicopter parenting thing and I think it's also
Yeah.
interesting that like just on paper, just by this, like how the term came to be, it was just plainly like, oh, the parents like wants to like oversee their child. It doesn't like come from a bad intent or like it's not inherently like a bad thing, but like it can lead to like bad outcomes or yeah, I think it's just interesting that it's not necessarily bad parenting or like an
Mm.
authoritarian parenting style, but there, as we've like talked about, like obviously some associations or like correlations to it. Yeah.
I still agree with the point that you were just saying about these generational differences. Um, I'm just thinking, for yeah, just like for like my generations, like my parents' generation, they didn't have a lot of expectations on the level of achievement of the kids, I think, for my generation. So, if you turn out to be successful in your career, that's good. But they didn't expect us to be, making such a high level of achievement. I think
Mm,
for my parents' generation. Yeah. So if you succeed, that's good for you. We cheer for you, but they didn't they didn't necessarily push us toward attaining a particular level of achievement. If you can, that's good. But if you cannot, that's okay too. Yeah, because I think that's the philosophy of the parents of my generation. So
Well,
thinking back when I was in college. Yeah, so I never received any pressure from my parents for me to need to achieve a particular level of achievement. Yeah,
mm,
even as I decided to go for graduate school, they didn't push me. They didn't push me to that. Yeah, I just
mm.
sometimes like I wanted them to push me to, attaining, something more than, an average graduate. But yeah, they didn't push me to. It's only just my own desire. Yeah, my own desire. Yeah, I wish I have some. Yeah, yeah, some.
You
Yeah,
got that internal motivation.
yeah, it's all about my choice. Yeah, it's all
Hmm.
about my choice. Even like I was intending to study music for
Oh,
the
I didn't
first, yeah,
know
for the
this.
first 3 years. Yeah, yeah, for the first 3 years in my college years. Because when I was, I think, yeah, because when I was in high school, I sang a lot because like I wanted to say I used to be gifted in music. Yeah. Yeah, but I really I had a very good year um and just love singing. Yeah, I love the art and stuff. So, but yeah, but like yeah, my parents did not have any problems for me to pursue a music degree, so to speak. Yeah, they didn't have any expectation of Um, compared with, yeah, I'm seeing a lot more of my peers now that they're parents. They yeah, they do some, not I wouldn't say all, but like some of them, yeah, you know, do care about, the kids. Like, what are they going to, study, or what are they going to do after graduation? Yeah, they
Mm.
have this concern. Like they worry. But my parents never worry. Yeah, they didn't care. Yeah, but they
Also,
they they gave me money for studying.
mhm. I was gonna also say that maybe like as a society now we have a more narrow definition of what success looks like, or like um what does being able to like live in a society entail? Because like um with like the what is it called? Like cost of living crisis, like to even be able to afford to live, the barrier is just so much higher. Like you have to be making like a certain amount of money. And like I feel like in the past it wasn't as bad, and like there was just more freedom to experiment, or like it would be fine um like just pursuing what you actually want to do versus like what you think you have to do to like make ends meet, or like I guess like parents' expectations of you as well. Because I know something that is like quite common in hustle culture, or like quite common with like I guess helicopter parents is like if you go to university, like oh after university, like how does your degree help you get like a certain job, or like there's always like an instrumental purpose to whatever you do. It can't just be like enjoyed for like its intrinsic good or whatever. It has to like get you to the next goal, and like because that's what we've defined like success in society nowadays to look like, and like how does getting to this goal like help you be able to live in the society? That
Yeah,
was kind of a long tangent.
yeah. No, it's good. Yeah, so let's work out a jingle. Yeah, or like a promotional thing on, the next episode. So we will um yeah, we will like uh introduce the first paper, Odenweller. Yeah, the Odenweller law paper in details. Yeah,
Hmm.
so that's episode 2. So we're gonna be presenting Odenweller et al. Paper in detail so that you can understand what really helicopter parenting means, and how helicopter parenting is associated with authoritarian parenting and conformity family communication pattern. Yeah, and why helicopter parenting is actually linked also with higher neuroticism,
Mm-hmm.
which is not something we want to have, or like a higher interdependency on significant others.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're afraid. That means that like these young people are afraid of making independent choices. They always like need to need the parents' approval, like needs to hear from the parents. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the outcome of helicopter parenting. Yeah. And then the third variable is coping efficacy. Yeah, so which links to, if you experience a failure in your course or in your course of study, what do you do with it? Yeah, so with helicopter parenting, with the expected, supervision, the parent supervision on the kids' grades, that obviously they have a lot of pressure for performing for the parents, right? Because the parents like really want the kids to have good outcomes. I think that's really what they're trying to get at. Why they are helicopter, because they want to make sure the kids succeed in what they're doing, right? So if the kids is not doing very well, then they are scared. Yeah,
Because that
so
also like can reflect badly on the parent as well.
yeah, exactly. So that's why all these like a series of negative emotional outcomes. Yeah.
Well, I did want to talk a little bit more about like why helicopter parenting has had such like negative connotations around it because like we talked about like the genesis of this term, like how um it was just created because like parents are just like supervising their child, but then it also like then we find out it like leads to all these bad outcomes. And then I think when we use the term helicopter parenting, it's kind of less about the parents like supervising or like really um like looking out for their child. It's more like associated with the bad outcomes now and like wanted to talk about like maybe why that is or like why it sometimes is looked at as the opposite of like positive parenting.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
is it is a big question as well. And like we've kind of touched on this as well just then, but
Yeah. 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 hmm Okay. So we'll see you guys. Hopefully you will we'll see you guys at our next episode in which we
mhm.
will introduce the Odenweller et al. 2014. Yeah. On
Yes,
helicopter
article
parenting.
1 of season 2.
Yes. Okay. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.